Welcome to another episode of Steele Creek Explorer. I'm your host, Jeremy Stout, and I'm also joined today by a special guest co-host, George Stout.
Hi.
It is winter break, and even though it is blustery, cold weather, we thought it would be fun to look for signs of life in the winter. Even though everything appears to be dead and the leaves are off the trees, there are still plenty of signs of life to find. Birds, mammals, plants, all of these things you can find in the wintertime, and some of these things you can only find in the wintertime. So let's get out there in the park and see what kinds of signs of life we can find in the cold months. One thing I'd like to mention is that wintertime is a great time for hiking. Now, I know that's contrary to popular opinion sometimes. People don't like to get out when it's really cold, but it's amazing how clear the winter woods can be. This is woods that in the summertime would be dark. We're down in a valley between two steep ridges and the trees would be covered in leaves, but in the wintertime it's wide open. The trees are bare, which allows much more light to get to the forest floor, and you can see for so much farther in every direction. Wintertime is a wonderful time for hiking in the woods. Just make sure you get out early enough, because of course, while it is awfully light in the woods in the early part, it gets very dark very fast once we get into the evening.
Okay, what's that?
Oh, cool find. Oh, good find, dude. All right. This is a wonderful sign of life in the winter. You know, when we think of plants in the wintertime, we tend to not think of a lot of green. Sure, most of the trees have lost their leaves. Lots of the annual plants have died and they'll come back from seed in the spring. But plenty of plants keep their foliage year round. And it's not just the evergreens, the pines and the hemlocks and cedars, but other plants as well. And this is actually, even though you don't see a flower, this is a wildflower. And this is a special kind of wildflower. It's a kind of orchid. And this is a species called Putty Root. And it's really easy to identify in the wintertime. In fact, it's easiest to identify in the wintertime because it has these large, beautiful leaves that are kind of light green and have these whitish stripes on them. So that is the wildflower Putty Root, and a wonderful plant to find in the wintertime. A common sight along a lot of the trails in Steele Creek Park is this right here. This is an evergreen fern, and it's very seasonally named. This is actually called Christmas fern. And it gets the name because it offers a lot of green on the forest floor, even in the wintertime, even around Christmas. So this is, the ferns are diverse, and we've got several different species in the park. They're an ancient group of plants. Going back far into Earth history, a lot of the coal that is mined in our area comes from ferns and fern-like plants that lived many millions of years ago. But this is a nice evergreen Christmas fern to offer you a little splash of color on your maybe otherwise dreary hike in the woods. All right, we're walking down the trail and we just found another wonderful sign of winter. When you find woodpecker holes in the side of a tree, rarely can you identify what kind of woodpecker it actually was. But this is one, the only woodpecker that I can identify by the holes it leaves behind. This is a very special winter finding because this is a bird that we only have in our area during the winter time. It's the Yellowbellied Sapsucker. We have 6 species of woodpeckers that occur in our region. Most of those are year-round birds. But the yellow-bellied sapsucker actually comes to us in the Bristol area from much farther north. And so when you hear birds fly south for the winter, well, we are south for a lot of birds that live far north of us in the breeding seasons. And yellow-bellied sapsuckers actually leave pretty telltale signs on the trees that they are taking sap from. And what they do is they often will make these perfect rows of circular holes, and they'll do this all up and down the side of a tree. Sometimes if it's not just these horizontal lines, it'll actually be squares of sequential holes. But when you see these lines of holes, you can be confident that that was a yellow-bellied sapsucker and that those holes were made most likely during the winter time. And this tree probably has several years worth of sapsucker holes on it. Cool find. Okay, well, not strictly a sign of winter, but it's definitely a nice winter find. This is a strange little bird called an American coot. While this may superficially look like a duck, they're actually not related to ducks. They're more closely related to chickens, and you can tell that when they walk on land. They actually bob their heads sort of like chickens do. They also, while they're very well adapted for swimming, they don't have webbed toes. They actually have what are called lobed toes. The toes aren't connected to one another by a flap of skin. And like I said, while this species you could find at Steele Creek Park during many months out of the year, it is a migratory species, and so the colder months are a great time to find them. While many mammals will actually bed down and some will even hibernate during the winter, we're definitely finding some fresh sign of our local beavers. Still active, still chewing on wood. They don't just build things out of wood, they actually eat it. And especially the inner bark underneath the dry bark is one of their favorite foods. And so here's some fresh cuttings, and they've taken down what appear to be some locust trees, maybe black locust. And that is a brave beaver, because even though it may be delicious, black locusts are covered in these really dense, really hard thorns. So goodness, I'd hate to get one of those the wrong way into my mouth. But apparently the beavers will brave the thorns and get these trees as a snack. So maybe we should find out what the beavers are doing in the wintertime. We can go pay them a visit. Well, here you can see one of two active beaver lodges on Steele Creek Park Lake. This is a really cool species to have. Even though they can be destructive, yes, they chew down trees, beavers are the largest rodent in all of North America. They're related to rats, mice, and squirrels. But they're much larger than that, of course. A beaver fully grown can be over 50 pounds, which is the size of a medium-sized dog. Of course, they are aquatic. They spend their whole lives in and around the water, and they construct lodges like you see here. Now, this is different from the dam. Beavers will build their own natural dams to stop up bodies of water, but here at Steele Creek Park, they already have a lake for their use. They don't have to build a dam. But what they actually live in is lodges. And so they actually access the lodge from underneath. They go under the water, and they have a series of passages to get into their lodge. And you might wonder what they do when it gets really cold and the lake can actually freeze over. Well, when that happens, beavers don't have access to their food source. If our beavers have been hard at work doing what they should be doing in the fall, then they've been creating a winter food stockpile. They'll actually take logs and sticks and they'll put them under the water. They'll go stick them in the mud at the bottom of the lake that they can access in the winter when the lake freezes over. But they'll still come and go from the lodge, from their passageways under the water, and they'll hunker down and go to sleep for the coldest portions of the winter. Of course, since beavers are nocturnal, we don't get to see them or take pictures of them in the daytime very much. But luckily, we set up our trail camera to watch the other dam on the lake. And you can see work that they do on the lodge over the course of an evening. Well, we found a lot of really cool nature today. Lots of activity, even right in the middle of winter time. We've got, some things fly south, some things go underground, some things do pretty much in the winter what they do other times of year. But all wildlife has ways of coping with the winter months. As for me, my favorite winter coping strategy is hot apple cider. But whatever it takes for you, bundle up, get to the park, get outside, because that's where you can be the explorer.